look at the damage. You see the dot is hitting for about 60 million. You can see that these are hitting for about 12 million, right? And we can just go 8. Hey, what is going on, my fellow nerds? OperatorOtter here, and today what I'm going to discuss is the bugged Ebonpiercer Shadow Blight build. This is a build that was actually covered yesterday by Macro Bioboy, so if you are a fan of him, I would go check this video out right here, the Blight Necro build. And on top of this, it was interesting because I actually got this, and then I was running a different type of LHC. I wasn't running shadow damage. I was running resource on Lucky Hit, and I realized all of a sudden when I put this amulet on that I just was getting a lot more resource on my Shadow Mage build, and I was just able to permanently cast Blight, and I was very curious about, whoa, something's not going right here. And when I talked to one of my friends about it, he showed me this video, and so we watched it, and essentially, we need to talk about what's kind of going on. This isn't going to go to live. There's no way in the world this goes to live. I think it kind of should in a way, and the reason I say that is because if they take this away, Necros are going to be in a really bad spot compared to the other classes, but that's for a video for another time. Let's just concentrate and focus on what's going on with this build. So we need to start with understanding how Lucky Hit chance works. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of a detour back to this chart that I made in the past, which is what was happening with LHC. So the rule is that each ability cast can only have a maximum of 1 Lucky Hit chance event proccing per cast. So we were using Bone Spear in this case. We had the main Bone Spear and the 5 shards, and each of them have this % chance of completing. That's not relevant. What we need to know is essentially what's happening is you have the spear and then you have each of the shards going out. If any of these attacks successfully proc a Lucky Hit chance event, then it will succeed it, and then it will nullify the future one. So if we go down right here, if the spear and the first shard did not proc the Lucky Hit chance event, but the second shard did, then the third, the fourth, and the fifth shard cannot proc another Lucky Hit chance event. This is how it's supposed to be. What's happening with Ebonpiercer is, let's imagine instead that this says Blight with the 4 piercing dots that are going out and attacking, and instead, what it says now here, let's just imagine it says Blight, and then it says all of the bolts. We'll just say bolt 1, and we'll just kind of drag it across. What's happening is this. Everything can succeed. And on top of that, another thing that's happening is you see that it says 16.68% chance here. It should actually say 100. So there's a bug that's actually making these have 100% Lucky Hit chance. And on top of that, each of them can successfully hit. And then here's another thing that can also stack on top of it that people aren't aware of, is that each tick of the dot actually applies these. So they stack on top of each other, and essentially you are able, because it's a dot effect, which means it attacks once every half a second, it just keeps proccing everything at 100% value every half a second. And this hits everything in the group, and you can proc the craziest Lucky Hit chance events in the world. So let's now go into the build and talk about it. So let's talk about taking off Ebonpiercer and just using Blight. Okay, Blight, it just does main damage attack. It can crit, and then it has a dot that goes for 6 seconds. Macro was talking about this. And so essentially what happens is as we hit this target, we're going to kind of look for this little like attack here. It'll like be like a little tick. There it was. There was one. There it is. You see that? That little, I don't know if you saw it, but there's that one little thing right there, right? That is this proc that's happening on this sword, which is the up to 40% chance to deal 60,000 shadow damage. That's what that is, okay? All right, now what happens is let's put on Ebonpiercer, and now watch what happens. Tink, 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 tink. Yeah, that's not supposed to happen, right? That's very much not what's supposed to happen. So what's happening here is that Ebonpiercer is able to cast multiple blights. I'm going to go ahead and do this real quick. Ebonpiercer is able to cast multiple blights, or multiple of these little piercing projectiles that deal this shadow damage over 3 seconds. Each of these dots are able to deal damage every 0.5 seconds, so it has 6 instances of dealing this damage. And they don't stack, which is weird. They are kind of like their own independent events, so they can't, like, multiple cast blights doesn't do anything. But what we can do is we can kind of get some stupidity going on. So we can actually look at the dot damage here. And what happens is that when we actually start going ape mode and we just absolutely attack as fast as we can. We turn on everything that we can and go ape. Let's see what the damage can look like. So we're going to stack up our Shadow Blight. Everything's good. We're going to curse our target, cast this, and just go. Now look at the damage. You see the dot is hitting for about 60 million. You can see that these are hitting for about 12 million, right? And we can just go ape. Now this is in a full version build of it. And so now what happens is that if we go into our little Excel chart and we talk about what the math is here, essentially what happens is that we have 5 instances that are dealing 12 mil each. We can do about 12 to 13. And then on top of that, we also have the main dot dealing 60 mil. And then we have other factors that are dealing about an additional 5 mil. And so this is 60 mil. This is 60 mil. And this is 5 mil, which comes out to a whopping 125 million every 0.5 seconds. So your DPS can now reach 150 million. Or sorry, 250 million. And that's essentially how this build is working. It's a little bit stupid. The problem that we're having is staying live, but I'm going to show you in the build exactly how we're going to do that. So let's go back and let's actually talk about what the build is. So let's start with gear. Essentially, the way that we're doing this with gear is that anywhere we can run Lucky Hit Chance, we run it. This isn't necessarily to make the Ebonpiercer proc more, but it's to make your Blight actually proc some more stuff. It's still a very good stat. We still want to run it, so we're going to be basically letting Lucky Hit Chance where we can, except for one spot. But in Lucky Hit Chance, armor, cold resistance, decrepify, size, and then the evade. We're going to make sure that we can stay on armor. Right now, you can see that I have 226,000 armor, but I promise you that I'm going to have max movement speed when I show you what the build's doing. For here, intelligence, max life, armor, you're choosing basically just separate resistances, and then when you go to your gear, you can just choose one of the things. Because I'm running the Wither board, I'm able to get that shadow resistance naturally, and so I'm able to do this, and you can fully cap out. And this full cap out is going to be without one of the sacrifices, so that's cool. So the gauntlet, here you go. I'm just going to run down it. If you need to pause the video at any time, go ahead, and you'll just see what's going on. So just taking a look at the gear or the stat rolls and the affixes, or the aspects, I should say. All right. So one of the things that we need to keep in mind that's very important is this sword. We cannot masterwork this to 12 out of 12. So I actually have like the GG sword. All right, this was the GG sword that I got. I got a sword that had a greater affix intelligence, and I got the intelligence to stack. And why that's really important is because this actually stacks with our beautiful Wither. We can actually get up to 2,000 intelligence with this build, and that means that our Wither can actually get up to about 38% with 182% damage modifier, which is extremely significant damage to dots. Those do not affect what the actual shadow damage is happening here, but as you saw, half of our damage is dots, right? This shadow damage that's happening from the Ebonpiercer proccing from this Lucky Hit Chance event is only half of our damage. The other half of our damage is legitimately dots that are happening from the actual Ebonpiercer dots themselves and Blight itself. It's literally happening from dots. And so because of that, increasing the amount of damage that our dots can do is very good, especially when we are able to bloat our intelligence to the super high amount. The problem that we're having right now is that when you masterwork an item 12 out of 12 for the sword specifically, it actually removes the Lucky Hit Chance. And I think I actually have 2 swords here that I did this with. So with 2 swords, I masterworked them 12 out of 12, and you can see that each of them removed the shadow damage proc. So we actually only want to level it to 11 out of 12. So keep that in mind. All right. Next thing. Let's go ahead and talk sacrifices. We're going to be doing Reaper, Cold, and Golem. So the way that we're doing this is that we actually don't need to run Defenders. We can actually get to maximum 70 resistances without having to run that. So we run Reaper. And then Cold, Vulnerable. So how are we applying Vulnerable? Because we are running Corpse Tendrils, but we want things to be vulnerable all the time. There is a roll in our ring that can actually make it so that up to a 34.1% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Our Lucky Hit Chance is so high that literally everything just becomes vulnerable immediately with this Blight dotting. And so we're just able to immediately apply Vulnerable to everything. And that will actually proc the Vulnerable modifier in our sacrifice, as well as the actual base Vulnerable multiplier of 20%. For our golems, we're actually going to be running Blood Golem. We're not actually going to be doing a sacrifice. Why? We don't care about crit. And the reason being is, as you saw when we were attacking, that doesn't crit. Our dots can't crit, and that can't crit. It can't. So what's the point, right? There's absolutely no point to running any type of crit in this build at all. This is a total non-crit build. And so because of that, we don't need to actually sacrifice Iron Golem. The other two, being that they give us 10% life and 10% increased attack speed, are nice, but there's actually a better one. You can run the one where your Blood Golem actually absorbs 30% of the damage you would take, and this actually allows you to run Golem now, which is important because when we actually cast Golem, we're able to become unstoppable. This is really good because this is actually now going to synergize with the Ghost Walkers that we have in our boots, which now allows us to, as you see my movement speed, it allows us to move at 200% movement speed. And we're able to have fully capped movement speed. So that's very good. We're going to be permanently swapping between Golem and Blood Mist. That's going to allow us to continuously proc Ghost Walkers so that we can just stay unstoppable. Tybalt's Will is an option that we can do for this, but I don't think it's going to be better than these natural pants giving us all these defensive stats just so that we can get 20% more damage. I don't think that's actually a thing. I think the damage is fine. We don't need more damage. We need more ways to survive. All right. Moving on, so we're free from sacrifices. For Paragon, I will just show you the board, and I will zoom out on each part of the board, and you can just kind of see it from there, and I will show you what I'm running. And take heed, the order that I'm going is going to be the order of the boards that you want to level up, so this will be your third board. All right, and so that's the Paragon. All right, now let's actually talk a little bit about the playstyle and kind of like what's going on. So really the big thing about this build is that we are proccing every lucky hit a chance event that we can even think of under the sun. And I'm going to say that the three most important ones are going to be the resource, the cooldown, and obviously the actual damage itself. So let's actually talk, we already saw what the shadow damage was. The other thing that I want to notice is just watch how when I just attack this way, how my blight is able to go down very quickly, right? My blight just immediately goes down. This is one single target, and all I'm running is one roll of the lucky hit 5% chance to restore the resource. That's the only thing that I'm running, and when I go against this target, which is not a boss, we just regular target, we can just see what the regeneration looks like. Right? So essence is not an issue. We don't need to worry about it. We are going to be able to permanently cast our blight and do whatever the heck that we want throughout the entire time. The next one that's really important, that's super good, is the cooldown reduction. Now, the thing about this is that we're going to be running Bone Storm. Now, Bone Storm does give us crit, so why in the world are we running it? Well, it also gives us 15% damage reduction. The fact that they have removed damage reduction from the game as a stat that you can roll in your gear now means that damage reduction is absolutely goated anywhere we can get it. And so Bone Storm, even though they're like trying to veer away from Bone Storm being the greatest thing since sliced bread and try to actually have us play other ultimates, Bone Storm actually just increased in value. It actually is even more important than anything else because now it's giving us damage reduction. On top of that, we are still able to run Aspect of Shielding Storm. Now, the thing that sucks about Aspect of Shielding Storm now is that it is proccing off of our base life again. I don't know if that's supposed to be that way, but it's only proccing off of our base life rather than our total life, so we're a little bit less tanky with that, but it doesn't matter. We're going to be running that, and then we're going to be running Osseous Gale. So Osseous Gale with this is going to allow Bone Storm to be up for 20 seconds. The question is can we refresh Bone Storm in 20 seconds? Yeah. Quite easily, actually. If you have these multiple targets, you can decrepify all of them. You can see how large the decrepify is because the decrepify size that we're running on the gear. We cast Bone Storm, and we just go eat. And it's back up. And it's back up. And it's back up. Yeah. So you can see how this is working. This also works with any other cooldown that you have, including your Golem. So we can use Golem, and look, it's up. And Golem, and look, it's up. And Golem, and look, it's up. We can also do this with Blood Mist. We can enter Blood Mist, come out of Blood Mist, enter Blood Mist, come out of Blood Mist, and re-enter Blood Mist. Now, usually in a dungeon, what's realistically going to happen is that you're going to cast your Golem, and then you'll cast your Blood Mist, and then you'll cast your Golem, and then you'll cast your Blood Mist, and then you'll cast your Golem, and it kind of swaps between the two. And the reason why you're doing that is that by using these two, you're going to consistently become unstoppable, which is activating your Unstoppable, which is allowing you to have 200% movement speed without actually having to evade or to run Metamorphosis or anything of that sort. It also allows you to move through enemies unhindered, so you can just go. That's essentially how this build is working. And like I said, it does a ridiculous amount of damage. I killed a world boss yesterday in, I think it was 1.7 seconds is what we got on Twitch. And then I also killed the Uber boss. I killed the Uber boss in 15 seconds. I was able to kill a Pit 200 boss in about give or take 2.5, 3 seconds. So it's a little bit extreme. I do believe that's absolutely going to get fixed. I do think that there are going to be suggestions as to how we can still run this build in a different variant of it, but it will be much less powerful. The only thing that I'm worried about is that this is the first time that Necro has really kind of had a bug that really benefits us, like other classes have had, and they didn't fix those, and they obviously are going to fix this one with the PTR. So like, oh, that's a shame. They finally come out with a PTR and we find this bug, and they just have to stay silent. They actually get to fix it. They don't get to stay silent about it. The thing that I'm saying though is that like if they remove this from the Necromancer, if they don't keep this or keep some variant of it and nerf it just a little bit in some version, but still kind of keep the idea of it, Necromancers are not going to be able to really compete with any other class. Every other class is basically smashing us, and that feels really bad. There's other opinions and talks that we can talk about in another video, but I wanted to get you into this. So hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you later today in my Twitch if you want to come in and ask any questions about it. All right, have a good day.